Hello, good afternoon. You are all very welcome to today's IoT session for the Cybersecurity Bootcamp for Women. Let's just wait a moment because I still have some girls joining the meeting. And I appreciate if you girls turn on the camera after post-presentation for the Q&As. You'll be able to ask your questions about the course, about the industry to Paul. And we have Audrey Barrett, a former student for the CCRO and NECSC course, joining us today. And it'd be nice to put some faces in the names. I have been in touch with a couple of you for the past 2-3 months and the last month, of course. I feel that those 30 days were so fast and you have certified already. I hope everyone is ready to take and play your part in the cybersecurity industry. So today we have a presentation with Paul, as I said, followed by the Q&As. Any questions you have during the presentation, you can just send through the chat. And at the end, everyone is welcome to turn on the cameras, the microphone, and interact with Paul and also Audrey. Just one more minute. Unfortunately, we won't have all the students joining us due to zone times, but I'd like to let all you know that we had over 150 students on this cohort, and our last course will be next month, and we achieved our main target, which was over 1,000 women taking this bootcamp. And fortunately and thankfully to all of you, you'll be running other 4 dates for 2022. So let's start. Paul, can you start the presentation for us, please?
Sure, no problem. Thanks, Natalia. That's great. And it's great to be here, everybody. You're all very welcome. And as Natalia says, we're going to take the guts of an hour, so as much as an hour to get through this material. I will speak quite quickly and I will go through the material quite quickly because I feel the most valuable part is when we're going to interact towards the end of it on the Q&A session. And of course, you're going to have the ability to rewatch this webinar via the recording. So if there's anything you don't quite get or you miss or you want to go back over that, that's no problem at all. You can do that from the ICTTF Cybersecurity Academy portal. So I'm just going to kick straight in, guys. And I covered quite a bit of material here. And then, as I say, we'll get to that point where we can actually have a discussion, answer questions. And we have one of our recently appointed ICTTF ambassadors, Audrey Barrett, who has been brilliant in leading the way for women in cybersecurity, and she wants to share her thoughts and her advice and her wisdom in relation to why women should really look at this as an industry option and a career option and so on for themselves. So let me kick straight in. So at this stage, guys, I think you know who I am, and I've been in this industry for over 30 years, started off in the very technical end of the industry, but over those years I have worked in various different roles and picked up a lot of different skills, if you like, qualifications and so on. I lead the ICTTF.org. That's the not-for-profit initiative behind these programs and behind this education program. And what we do is we commercially sell training courses, and we take the money that we've made from selling those commercial training courses so that we can do things like provide free training to bring women into the cybersecurity industry. But we've done many initiatives over the years, from summits to anti-bullying things and so on like that. We've been around for about 10 years. And also to pay the bills, if you like, I lead an organization known known as Cyber Risk International. I'm the CEO of that organization. We've developed a piece of technology known as Cyber Prism, and that's used around the world by various industries, mainly the financial sector, but in measuring and managing cyber risk. So enough about that by way of introduction. And also, you'll see that what myself and Natalia do at this stage of the webinar is we're just giving people time to join, because there's lots of people just get delayed joining into webinars, and before we get straight into the meat of it. So you remember, guys, that when I introduced the topic of cybersecurity and cyber risk, I talked about the fact that we live in two worlds. And when you appreciate that fact and you apply that to all of the different kinds of areas of cybersecurity risk and privacy and so on, you really see how important this is as a topic for society, for business, for the economy, for everything really. And I'm going to talk a little bit about COVID and the impact and why cybersecurity is so important now around the impact of COVID, to try and uncover and outline even in more detail why it is so important that we have people working in the cybersecurity industry. So this premise of working in the cybersecurity, existing in the cybersecurity world and in the real physical world, the best example I can give, the most poignant example is that when we look at things, for example, yesterday evening, I was on a TV program here in Ireland talking about the fact that so many people are scamming people via text messages. And literally there's been an increase of somewhere between 400 and 700% in the amount of text messages, fraudulent text messages, often referred to as smishing. So it's a bit like phishing, PH, and the SMS version of it is called smishing. And those techniques of sending you these fake links saying, hey, you've got a delivery from DHL, you've got a delivery from Amazon, or you've been in close contact with someone from COVID. They're techniques, they're vectors of attack that bad guys use, cyber threat actors use, in order to perpetrate their objectives, their initiatives to scam you and make money from you. And it's a numbers game. And when I said to the journalist, can you imagine if, 1,000 people a day were being mugged on the streets in the real physical world? There'd be outcry. People will say, we have to do something about this. There's an epidemic of mugging. But the reality is that thousands of times that of people are being robbed on a daily basis by cyber threat actors. It's the equivalent of reaching out into their bags, wallets, taking their data, copying it, taking their money, taking their assets and using them, and impacting their lives, not just from a quantitative perspective of stealing money, but impacting their life where they've maybe stolen private images of them, or maybe destroyed their data and they've lost their data, or maybe destroyed their reputation, those kind of impacts. So we talk, obviously a lot more about that as we go on. So there is this realization that we're in two parallel tracks, and we have the cyber world and the real physical world. And where over the centuries, we've developed laws, social norms, and ways of dealing with these kinds of threats in the real physical world. A lot of that just doesn't exist and doesn't apply in the cyber world. So this infographic, of course, is a summation. It's a Venn diagram, if you like, of the different kind of threat actor groups. Now, it's not all of them, and it's not prescriptive, but I put this together because it's a great way to illustrate to you that all of these groups effectively have different objectives. If we look at cyber criminals, their objective is profit. They want to make money. They want a return on their investment. They invest into campaigns and they want to get a return out of that. You may have nation states that are being involved for an economic advantage or for geopolitical reasons. You may have hacktivists getting involved for ideological reasons. It may be that they are against what a particular company does if they're harming the planet, if they're harming animals, and they may take these hacktivist techniques, which is like online activism, if you like, and using those kind of techniques. You may have terrorist groups, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, these kind of groups who have a strong a history of using cyber-related tactics and techniques that are generally used by cyber criminals, but they have used them and leveraged them to groom and radicalize individuals, and in that they use the techniques of pedophiles effectively in doing that. They use the techniques of cyber criminals in organizing events. And so when I say events, I mean terrorist events, physical events. And then again, we're talking about this connection between the real world and the cyber world. And of course, then there's the thrill seekers, the people that do this for fun and go, hey, this is fun. Guess what I can do? I can get into this database and I can leak out all of this data, but they don't really understand the consequences of it, or they don't care about the consequences of it. And we get that, for example, and we've seen that we talk about case studies of that in relation to TalkTalk, $1 billion ISP that was essentially taken down by a teenager. And we've seen more and more of this because it is essentially for almost seen as an extension of game playing, because online game playing often involves things called hacks and cheat codes and those kind of things. So for the younger underdeveloped mind, if you like, or those kind of fantastic brains, maybe even on a spectrum, that they love investigating and figuring out how things work, they are effectively moving into the world of criminality, and they don't even realize it sometimes. And also, by having those skills or being identified as having those skills, you'll often have the organized criminal groups, what we call OCGs, or organized criminals, who are often just people persons who are able to use their charisma, use their charm to convince somebody to do something. So you often see these kids being used as pawns and labor in the cyber criminality industry. And in fact, a lot of the times when there is attribution or investigations that lead to attribution, which is effectively the term means bringing people in front of courts and facing justice, it's often just those elements, those individual actors in the cybercrime that are caught, but it's not the people that have made them do it or encouraged them to do it. And then, of course, you have the discontent, the cyber insiders. From that perspective, what we're talking about is maybe somebody that, we often say that nobody on day one comes to work for your organization and wants to do you harm, but something happens along the journey. And it may be that they missed out on a job promotion or something. But what we're finding more and more of is that maybe they are victims of crime and they're being coerced into carrying out something from within the organization. So the point I make about insiders is they can carry out a huge, larger impact compared to those outside your organization, because they're inside, and we often just protect organizations from the outside and think, hey, we don't want the bad guys to get in and we trust everybody inside. But if you have somebody on the inside who's trusted and has been tricked into doing something or coerced into doing something, that impact can be absolutely significant. So I'm going to motor on through these slides, and we're going to talk about the elephant in the room, guys. That elephant in the room is COVID. I've already mentioned the term. I know we're all sick and tired of it, but the reality is we're going to be dealing with the impact of COVID from a biological and health perspective, but also from the impact on digitalization, how we operate with it within the world for quite some time to come. So I'm going to fly through a couple of slides here to give us more time for the question and answers and just highlight some of the key issues that we're dealing with here. So let's look at this. What we're dealing with here is it's caused chaos in the global economy. It has transformed society, how we operate. We wear masks, we have to disinfect our hands, how we have meetings, how we train people, how we meet people. All of those things are done completely different. It's impacted what we call the inherent cyber risk of an organization. So what is that? So the inherent cyber risk is effectively, you think of a metric, 1 to 10 or 1 to 1,000. And you think of where an organization is on a scale of those metrics in relation to the amount of risk they have in relation to cyber. Those things are determined on how much technology they use, how many websites have they got, how many staff have they got, how much revenue of their business is performed online, what kind of businesses, how much data do they use, PII data, personally identifiable information. All of those kind of things, guys, are all factors that make up your inherent cyber risk level. Now, I put it to you that pre-COVID, everybody's business model is different post-COVID for one even basic reason. So many people work from home. So many people communicate over video links and so on. So it has changed how businesses operate, and therefore their inherent cyber risk level has changed. Now, when your inherent cyber risk level changes, that means you need to change your security program to make sure that you're using the appropriate controls in place and they're at the right level. And what this means is that COVID has effectively caused a huge requirement for people in the cybersecurity world to be able to help organizations deal with this impact, this cyber-related impact. We've had disruption in supply chains. It's accelerated the business model transformation. And that's another almost positive, dare I say, impact of COVID, where things, are now happen in a very short time period, where somebody might have decided, hey, we're going to move our business online, or we're going to create a new app to do X, Y, and Z for our clients. And we have 18 months to do that. We're going to do testing and everything else. No, this is about, we need this up and going within 2 months. So we need this up and going within a month. So it's accelerated business model transformation. Again, this has increased the requirement for people that understand cyber, because Digital transformation is a great thing, but everything has to be wrapped up, enshrined, and protected in cyber risk management. And that's why there's so many. There's over 4 million open cybersecurity jobs at the moment. That number is growing all the time. So very soon I'll be saying 5 million, because they simply can't find people with the right kinds of skills to do this. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. And there's this increased reliance on the digital economy. So another few points in relation to COVID and the impact. Let's look at this. I'm going to go backwards here, guys. We've got that psychological impact on humans. The working from home, the discombobulated, the distracted, kids running around, maybe dog barking, operating with sensitive data in less than an ideal situation, maybe operating on a residential internet gateway. All of these things have been an opportunity for the bad guys to increase their activity and increase their success rate. And that's what these guys do. It's a numbers game. It's about spray and pray, and they send out millions of emails and millions of text messages and hope somebody would click on them. And that psychological impact on humans has meant that they're getting more successful at it, because and they've more access to things they wouldn't have had before. So we're seeing this huge increase in cyber threat actor activity. And I'll talk about this from Interpol, Europol, and so on. These frightening statistics. Again, what I'm trying to get across here is that there's an increased demand for cyber risk and cybersecurity people because of all of these kind of things. So let's move on a little bit here. And when we put all of these things together, guys, what we almost talk about is we talk about a perfect storm. So I'm a fan of Venn diagrams, if you haven't gathered this already, right? Because I think it's not just one thing is the catalyst. It's many things coming together is the catalyst. So we look at that impact of COVID on the digital infrastructure and a reliance. We look at the impact on the economy, the geopolitics, the fact that we've almost just done a carte blanche and handing over privacy. Anybody wants your data, there's my mobile number, there's my name, all of this is feeding into that risk profile and making us more vulnerable to cyber threat actors. And it means that we've an increased need and requirement to protect systems and people from those cyber threat actors. And as we move on, as I've mentioned, we have COVID, this most effective digital transformation officer in the world. I can't overplay that, right? I mean, that is just huge and a significant thing, because what people are going, this is great. Everybody's doing business online. Everybody's doing the transactions online, and we're really digitalizing the economy and how everything's working. But where are the people? Where are the soldiers of cyber that are able to help people do this properly and able to help them with procurement and supply chains, help them with make sure they're compliant with laws and regulations, make sure that they're training people and staff in relation to awareness and how they operate now with data? Where are these people? That's those 4 to 5 million open cybersecurity jobs. That's exactly where they are. And we often refer to this as what we call a black swan event. And a black swan event is effectively, in risk terms, it's a phrase used to say something that we never expected would happen, but then it becomes quite normal. Okay, so let's think of that. And I'm going to talk from the perspective of Ireland for a moment. So in Ireland, our health service, in the middle of a global pandemic, was hit with a ransomware attack. And that ransomware attack crippled and closed down the health service executive of an entire country, while these essentially cyber terrorists, cyber criminals, somewhere in a gray area there, held a country to ransom and said, we want money or you're not getting back your data. And the fact that sick children with cancer couldn't get treatments and all of those human impacts that would really impact people, that meant nothing to these guys because they wanted money. And the overall cost of actually dealing with that incident looks like it's going to head towards €1 billion, to clean up the operation, not to pay the ransom and to be able to bring things up. And why did it happen? And I mean, there's going to be questions to go on for that for quite some time. I won't get into it on this webinar, but, I will say that ransomware is a product of poor cyber resilience and poor cyber hygiene. And by having a good cybersecurity and cyber risk program in place, you are able to thwart the activities of the cyber threat actors. In other words, you're able to impede them, you're able to prevent them from being so successful so easily, and you're able to reduce the impact because you're able to increase your ability to be cyber resilient. And all of these various areas I'm talking about all fall under that umbrella of cyber risk. And it might be that you don't work across the whole gamut and across the whole holistic area, but you may work in a particular area: business continuity, incident response, cyber resilience, legal, compliance, money laundering, all of those kind of pieces that fall within this area. So the world is heading to a new normal. Well, The news is we're already at the new normal, and tomorrow there's another new normal, and the day after that there's another normal, because we're all transitioning, we're all working on how to deal with this and how we work forward. And when we look at this, and I reference some of these things in relation to the notices from Europol, Interpol, and Garda Síochána here, the National Cybersecurity Centre here in Ireland. Even the World Health Organization has sent out warnings about cybersecurity scams related to COVID-19. And even pre-COVID, we had Christine Lagarde, who's the president of the European Central Bank, came out just pre-COVID and said an impact of a cyber incident on the financial sector across Europe could cause a liquidity crisis. Because what Christine was saying was, we're all interconnected and we're all interdependent. So this contagion effect, this knock-on effect that could happen. Now, you think of how strong and poignant her words are now, after 18 months, nearly 2 years of COVID, people working from home, how much more vulnerable we are, how much more dependent we are on these systems, how much more interconnected we are. Again, the requirement for people that can deal with cyber risk and cybersecurity and privacy related issues. So it doesn't matter what sector you're involved in, we're all related in that global economy, large, small, medium, the whole way as we go around. So what I often talk about is I use this image to talk about the fact that we all need to take responsibility on this. I mean, when I was talking on the TV program last night, they were talking about, well, who's responsible for this, sending text messages? And he had a regulator going, well, it's up to users and not to be stupid to click on links. It's ridiculous, right? We all have a part to play. It generally gets down to what I often refer to as the 3 E's. You've got engineering, enforcement, and education. Yes, we all need to be educated. The engineering, we need technical solutions in place, and enforcement, we need laws that are going to be followed up, and people are going to face attribution. But I use this image because I know that we all have part of our brain called the limbic part of the brain, which is this good instinct where it's back to the reptilian brain almost, where people go, there's something not quite right, and I feel it, right? And that is what kicks off in you when you see an unattended bag in an airport, if you're lucky enough to get to an airport in the last year or two, and you see something like that. And we all take responsibility. We go over and we say, hey, excuse me, what's the story with that bag over there? Blah, blah. We all take that kind of responsibility. And that's what we need to do with cybersecurity. That's what we need to do with cyber risk. We all have to take and play a part of responsibility. It can't be, well, it's the bank. No, it's the telco provider. No, it's the end user. It's the customer. We all have to up our game in relation to cyber hygiene. And think of that concept in relation to COVID. If we just put it all on one faction of people to deal with this, then it will never end. So you're dealing with almost a virus from the point of view of cyber criminality. And if we all up our game, of in relation to cybersecurity and cyber hygiene, we make everything a lot safer for everybody. So where does it all start? Well, when I'm pushed and pressed for an answer on what's the solution to cyber security and cyber risk and the cyber challenge, it gets down to this thing: leadership. We need leaders that can actually understand cybersecurity, to be able to empower and to be able to innovate things in a proper way. And I say proper as in a risk managed way, a cyber risk managed way. So good, effective, informed leadership, where they're getting the right kind of metrics, the right kind of information they can use to make calculated, decisive decisions based on risk. So intelligence-led decisions is what leadership needs to be able to do, because they want to deliver on the business objectives, but they want to do that in a way that is effective, it's timely, and it's supported by an effective cybersecurity and risk program. So let's look a little bit more about that. So this is all led from leaders will set policy. Policies effectively those, what people often refer to as, oh, those boring documents I got the day I signed up into the company and I read them and that's the end of it. Policy effectively is the culture of an organization. Policy is the internal laws of the organization. You have a policy on remote working, or you have a policy on bringing your own device. And they're effectively the rules of engagement and how you deal with those things. And they're supported by procedures and supported by worklists, checklists, instructions, and they produce evidence that those things are in place. But loyalty goes beyond compliance, because compliance is always going to be way behind where the security threat level is. Because where does compliance come from? It comes from anecdotal evidence of where the risks were, past tense. Then they have to be deciphered into supervisory guidances. Then they have to be turned into regulatory issuances. So all of this takes time. So by the time something comes out for any kind of regulation body, it's stale, it's old, and it's always going to be a minimum baseline. It's very important to do it, but you shouldn't set your cybersecurity levels at the risk level of compliance. You want your people, you want your staff, you want your business partners to be loyal to your brand, to your organization, and to be able to protect you and care about what's going on, because that's the difference, being able to go click, click, click. I did my compliance training and I think I'm okay now. You want them to actually understand, be cyber savvy, and to care what's going on. And we talk about trust, and loyalty is the cousin of trust. Trust is this amazing magic thing, which is different from every single human being in the world. When you trust something, you make yourself vulnerable to it. The ultimate trust is love. And when you trust a website, you make yourself vulnerable to it. When you trust a person, you make yourself vulnerable to them. And what we're all trying to do in the world of digitalization and digitalizing products and services and everything is make people trust your online brand. That's not just a really cool looking website. That's about the integrity of how people and that brand handles cyber incidents, how they protect customers' information, how they articulate that, how they signal that they care about you as a customer, and they don't blame you when something goes wrong, but they keep you informed and they help you through all those things. That's about effective incident management, built in with the loyalty and brand and integrity of the organization. It all forms part of what we call the culture of the organization as well. And then we have to remember that when the bad guys can't, hack maybe through a firewall, they may hack the human. They may even walk into a premises, and they may do what we call dumpster diving, just steal the bins and take important information out of that. They may steal the hard drive out of the photocopier, take all of the recorded information off that hard drive. They may go in, pop in a USB key. They may go into a meeting room, which is flood wired. That means all of the active points are there working in a meeting room. Plug in a laptop and just leave it there, or leave a Wi-Fi transmitter there plugged in onto your network, and they go out to the car park and they sit in the car and they're on your network. There's so many different things that happen in the physical world around cyber threats. So it's so important to have the two worlds converge. And it can't be that you're operating in silos, going, we have our physical security team here, we have our cybersecurity team here, we have our IT security team here, we have our GDPR compliance team here, we have our AML compliance team. You get the point, right? All of this needs to be joined up holistically. So it's about becoming business protection officers, not just saying, well, I'm okay on this front, they're okay on that front, my colleague looks after that. Everyone in your organization. If you have 500 people working in your organizations, that's 500 people that can be business protection officers for your organization. And we look at this now on the demand. I've mentioned there 4 or 5 million open cybersecurity jobs. And some of these slides I'm going to show you now, these are actually going back even a couple of years, because there's lots of job roles out there that the pay and packages involved in them are mind-blowing. I mean, $1 million euro packages for people that are able to do this. And what I'll talk about is the fact that a lot of these salaries are not going to the kind of people you think they go to, right? They're not going to the Mr. or Ms. or whatever security practitioner that has been 20 years just doing cybersecurity, because that's not really what business are after. What they want are people that maybe understand the business, understand how private banking works, understand how investment banking works, understand how an airline works. And they want to find people that understand the business model and understand cyber risk and are able to apply the principles of cyber risk management to those roles. That's who are getting those $1 million bucks, when it comes to those kind of roles. So we've also seen these roles for people that may be more senior in their careers. There's lots of cyber non-exec director roles out there as well, very lucrative, because it's like trying to find a unicorn. I mean, trying to find someone that understands this kind of material and is able to articulate it and work and communicate in a level. And don't get me wrong, guys, like there's lots of people looking for cybersecurity jobs that can't get them down in the technical end. And that IT security end of updating, patches, firewall management, all that kind of stuff, that's a busy end of it, where the demand and those higher end salaries tend to be in towards that sort of almost middle management and upwards from their end of what we're seeing. So they want to find business people that understand cyber risk. And very quickly, I'm not going to delay too long on this slide, but this is a very intentionally busy slide, because what I'm trying to show you in this infographic is the world of a CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer. And in looking at this, you see all the different areas that a CISO may work on and the kind of skills they may need: security operations, risk management, identity management, legal, HR, compliance audits, security architecture, project delivery, business enablement, and of course, budget. Now, let me pause for a sec so you can reflect on this. What we're talking about here is a CISO. And a CISO is generally seen, the term is misused an awful lot in the industry, and you should be aware of that, right? And misused, is a proper CISO is, and I'm going to talk about how they're graded in a moment, but a proper CISO is somebody who is operating at board level. They're reporting into the board at the very least. A CISO does not operate as an IT manager or under a CIO. It's just, they're not going to be effective in that line, right, of oversight, governance, and so on. And so what we often find in organizations are that they either can't afford or can't find one particular individual that can do all of these things. That's understandable. So what you end up having is a CISO office or a CISO function made up of a number of different people. And it may be that within your career, you end up being in an area of this. You could be a cybersecurity project manager. You could be a cybersecurity architect. You could be working in the area of compliance and audits around cyber. It really depends. And all of these things, or you may be at a stage in your career where holistically, all of this stuff and you're effective at it. So when we look at this, we can see that this is a relatively detailed breakdown in relation to different levels. When we looked at what we call a level 1 CISO, there's lots of those guys out there, but we estimate that there's less than 100 in the world at level 4. So when we look at that, we're talking about the people who are getting over $1 million a year and are able to do all of this kind of stuff are in those. But when we look at here on the left, let's have a look down: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. And we'll talk a little about that later, because they are the function areas of the NIST cybersecurity program. And you break down the kind of skill levels we have here. And again, I encourage you to come back to this video, pause and look through this infographic and see how it's broken down, because what we want to talk about is most are in that level 1 area as a CISO in organizations, but people want to go towards the level 4, of course. And then look at the organization attitude towards cyber risk. Again, the level 4s have a good, healthy attitude towards cyber risk as opposed to the level 1s. Then we look at the leadership competencies, because this is what it's about. It's about being a business leader that understands cyber risk, security, and privacy. That's effectively what a CCRO is or a CISO is. They're able to do that at that level. So I'll move on from here, and we see all the various different pieces here around the profile of them and so on like that. But as I say, you can go back and you can look at that and study it in a bit more detail. Now, one of the biggest challenges that organizations have and they face today is actually attracting good cybersecurity people. And I believe a lot of the reason for that is because the organizations simply don't know what they're looking for. And I talk in a moment about the answer lies within, because what they think is that this is a siloed piece of work, and you find an expert that comes through the door and will understand your business, understand your culture, understand your aspirations, your ambitions, and so on, and come in like a magician and just go, boom, I can do all of these things for you. But the answers actually lie within the organization. So as salary scales go up, and as the the offerings, or if you like, the available resources tend to be in the area of, somebody's just got a CISSP, or somebody's got a Cisco CCNA, or whatever. And they're all great qualifications, right? But if you can get somebody within your organization and you can grow them and turn them into what you need, they're going to be far more effective, because they know how your business operates. They know the politics. They know everything. So it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the most responsive to change. The world is changing. Digitalization, COVID, the impact, all of those, everything's becoming more and more cyber, more dependent on cyber and cybersecurity. And of course, there's more incidents all the time. It's fueling this area, this sector. And I will not be surprised if I'm talking about 5 million open cybersecurity jobs by Q1 next year, because there's such a demand for people in this space. So way we handle this is that we're, of course, the mission of ICTTF is to help people deal with cybersecurity risk and so on, and privacy. And we've done that over the years with various different initiatives. It's about creating a community, about people being able to share information with each other and help each other. Collaboration is key to this. Education is key to this. So we put together an offering known as the Certified Cyber Risk Officer course, which has been hugely successful all over the world. And I just want to go through a quick overview of that to give you an idea holistically, because that is probably the best way of breaking down the various disciplines. So that course, for example, is delivered over 8 modules over 8 weeks, and there's lots of different versions of it. And Natalia can tell you all about that if you have any questions and queries about it. But what this will give you is an idea of what makes up the syllabus, if you like, or the education remit of what's required within businesses. So let's have a look at some of this. Well, the first thing, and you're a long way there now, is understanding the cyber risk landscape. Understanding different cyber threat actor groups, their motivations, how they operate, all that kind of stuff, right? Then we move on to understanding cyber strategy requirements. Cyber strategy requirements are, well, the amount of times I've walked into a business and I've met their CISO and I say, okay, so you work in X bank. Now tell me, how does X bank make money? And the guy shrugs his shoulders and goes, I don't know, I do cybersecurity. If you don't know how the business operates, if you don't know what the plans are for the next year, 3 years, 5 years? How are you developing the appropriate strategy to support the business mission so that you can support them and empower the leaders to do that part? That's what understanding cyber strategy is. It's the business element of it, and making sure that your cybersecurity program is aligned with your business objectives. Then we look at cyber risk quantification. Quantification is effectively being able to put metrics around things. One of the pieces that is a weakness within the cybersecurity industry is the fact that everything can be subjective and everything can be over technical. So people can say, well, how are we doing on cybersecurity? Oh, we're doing good. That's a qualitative statement. Like, I need to understand what my risk levels are. Getting back to the business leaders who want to make an informed, calculated, intelligence-led decision, you need to give them numbers they understand. So if they're running out a particular business mission to, for example, deploy a new app, what are the risks associated with that app? And if you're able to articulate, say, well, we're carrying a 20% residual risk as opposed to the inherent risk of rolling out that app at the moment, they understand that and they go, we can live with that, we accept it, or how do we mitigate it, or how do we transfer it? You're giving them the information they need to make those decisions. And we talk a lot in there about the industry metrics that are currently around and how valuable or not valuable they are, and how to decipher them, because you need to demystify this for the business. They can't all be technical experts, and you want to be able to relate it back to the business. So we talk about how doing that. Then we talk about cyber risk leadership and the culture. How do you affect the culture? How do you train, educate, and make your organization an organization that appreciates, understands, and values cybersecurity and risk? I often talk about the fact that cybersecurity is an investment, not a cost. Because if I'm talking to a business leader, and they go, well, how much should I be spending? And should it be a portion of IT budgets? And should it be this? You're investing in the culture of the organization. You're investing in protecting the reputation. You're investing in your ability to have an increased success rate and rolling out successful business models and so on from your business. And of course, cyber risk and the law. This is a vast and complex area. And if it's your bag, fantastic. I mean, because it's growing all the time, from the relation to privacy law, mandatory breach notification, compliance requirements, all of these things. This is a vast, vast area. And it's a challenging area to get the harmonization of laws and regulations working, because what you do around your cybersecurity program operating in the UK or Africa or Ireland may not be legal or lawful in another part of the world. So getting that balance right and that ability to be able to do that and facilitate and empower your business to be able to operate in those jurisdictions is the challenge. Then, of course, we look at cyber resilience and incident management. Things will happen. There will be incidents. How do you deal with those? Cyber resilience is about, effectively the ability to be able to mitigate the impact of these incidents and be able to recover as quickly as possible. Understanding those processes, understanding how to support the business in doing that is absolutely paramount. It's an imperative and it's key. And even, for example, I mentioned earlier on Christine Lagarde, the European Central Bank. If you're working in the financial sector and you go onto the European Central Bank's website, you'll see they have a minimum expectation level for cyber resilience. This is something where there's an acceptance that things will happen, and the comfort, the assurance that regulators want is that, one, you would know it happens, so you get your cyber incident detective controls in place, that you could respond, you could recover. Okay, really, really important. So we cover those pieces off. And of course, as we have more and more people working remotely, as we deal and we become more and more dependent on outsourced service providers, we need to be able to manage and understand how we manage the risk with those entities. And finally, that course, the CCRO course, the Certified Cybersecurity course, culminates with you being able to develop a strategy for your own business. So we take everything we've learned and say, well, how would you do this? And we use a case study and we work our way through and look at how all of that is put together so they can understand how this operates in a real world scenario. But I'm going to take a break just for a quick second, and I'm going to let you listen to some of the feedback from some of the students that have been on the course.
And if I was to say to any other of my board directors or any other board directors who may listen to this, is that it should be the #1 course for all board directors as part of your professional development pathway.
I guess there were so many different aspects of it actually that I was actually genuinely surprised as to how wide the topic was. Also very interesting. Obviously it touched areas around the outsourcing, around cyber strategy. To be honest, all these areas that we've discussed at a board level, but actually now I actually was armed and dangerous in the board meeting. So I was asking probably a lot more questions than they appreciated.
I suppose I've been in adult education for 20 years now, upskilling, doing various levels of courses, doing, you know, I've done degrees, diplomas, kind of other maybe not non-professional qualified courses, but I have been doing in adult education for 20 years. And this is by far and away the best course I've ever done.
Having completed a master's in cybersecurity in the last couple of years, I built up a lot of theoretical knowledge, and this course was really to fill in some of the practical cyber risk management gaps that I felt I had in my knowledge. The course was really excellent, I have to say. Very practical, very relevant, very topical, with great examples, you know, real life examples of issues that are happening today in every entity around the world. So yeah, it was a really useful course, and really thrilled that I did it, actually. Well, as I said, I've completed a cybersecurity master's, but a lot of that is theoretical, a lot of you know, discussion points, but this course is very practical. It's really how you can implement a cyber risk management framework in your organization today. So, you know, anyone working in that area, I would suggest, you know, they should be looking to this course because it will help them in their day-to-day job.
So there you got an overview from some of the students on, and we're going to be talking to Audrey later, and you can get some live feedback from Audrey as well in relation to that. So when we look at this, guys, we look at trust being the sister of security. We look at trust being that human emotion, and trust that makes you vulnerable, but it's the CISO's core mission to be able to establish trust around cyber risk within an organization and become that trusted advisor. So what we're able to do with that from the point of view going forward, sorry, as my my PowerPoint starts acting up, is we want to talk to you about your next steps potentially in becoming a cyber leader. We want to support you on that journey. So what we're doing is everyone who has successfully completed the course, we're giving you €1,000 towards your next step in your career. And that's something you can contact Natalia about, and she'll be glad to help you out, because we do this with every student that has successfully completed the cybersecurity bootcamp for women, and we reward them with a €1,000 voucher towards their next step in their education process. And further to that, if for any of you who are actually based in Ireland, we've also arranged a grant with ICT SkillNet. For those who are in full-term employment, can generally apply for this grant as well and get a further amount there, 455 of the course, bringing the cost of the next course into only 495. But look, enough of that detail. You can get all of that from Natalia. As I say, I'm going to move on towards our Q&A session because it gives me a chance to take a breath. I'm going to introduce Audrey Barrett, who is Data Protection Officer of SIP2, who's a CCRO and an NCSE. And hello, Audrey. Thank you so much for your help today on this, because I can take a little breath as they all start throwing questions at you.
Thanks, Paul. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Hi, everyone. Just want to say, because I've been watching the presentation along with you today. So obviously I just found out it's your last session and you've all qualified. So first of all, I want to wish you all congratulations. That's an amazing achievement. And just well done to everybody for engaging with it. And thanks to ICTTF for putting the opportunity out there for everybody as well.
Fantastic. And so look, we're opening up the floor, so to speak, for any questions. Please feel free to put your camera on, and we can interact with you and answer any questions you may have in relation to the course material, your future career, anything that has a tenuous link back to the word cyber, and we will talk about it.
Paul, while you were presenting, we got the question, so you will start with this.
Yeah.
If it's okay with you. So the student is asking, to your opinion, does a cybersecurity insurance is needed for companies, or benefits are lower than costs? Is a question that we often get from students related to insurance.
So, okay. It's a sort of loaded question in a way, so I'll be careful how I answer it. Okay. So if you think what insurance is for when nothing else works, and it's a last measure. that you rely on your insurance policy. So whether you have an insurance policy for fire on your home, okay, you do everything to prevent the fire, right? You make sure these things don't happen. But your last call is if everything else went wrong and your house burnt down, that's when you rely on the policy. So for businesses, and certainly many regulated businesses, for example, in the likes of Bermuda, where we do a lot of activity there at the moment around the Bermuda Monetary Authority code. Part of that code says that, listen, you should consider having cyber insurance. So it's almost become mandated in certain sectors and certain areas. And I think it would be very brave and person to say to their business leaders, we're so good, we don't need to have insurance. It'd be a bit like saying, we don't need fire insurance in our home because we've taken so many precautions. So it's part of a cybersecurity program, and it's, in my view, a very necessary part. But the subsection part of that question in relation to is it worth the money and so on like that, that's about your cost benefit analysis. We talk about that within the CTO course when working out the risk leverage on the return of a control that you're going to put in place. So that's on a case-by-case basis, in other words. Happy to answer the next question.
Great, thank you, Paul. The next question I have is for Audrey. Audrey, this student have seen the video testimonial with you before, and now the piece that Paul played. So for you, the CCRO and the NECSE made any difference in your role? Like, are you using the knowledge? Are you applying? Can you describe your own experience professionally, please?
Absolutely. So yes, I've used the knowledge in my role. I think the main thing, it's given me an increased confidence in demanding attention from senior management and board level. It's given me the confidence to go into these levels of meetings and say, I know what I'm talking about, and you need to hear this, and this is why it's important. I think that was, it's not just about confidence. Confidence is there because I now have the knowledge. Where before the courses I did, I kind of knew, this was important, but I didn't know how to go into a boardroom and say, this is important because, and have a strong argument to back it up, and have a broad level of knowledge to also back up that. So without a doubt, it's that the knowledge and confidence it's given me for doing these courses has been very important. And actually, just if you don't mind me butting in, that question on insurance, funnily enough, I was literally in a seminar just before this one. I jumped out of that to come into this one, and it was with the insurance industry and talking about cybersecurity. And the message they were putting across was that expect to see serious increases in cybersecurity insurance. They've been happening gradually over 2021, but they're expecting them to increase quite significantly from Q1 of 2022. And what they're suggesting, and this is from the insurance industry, not from me, but what they're suggesting is that to even be able to get cybersecurity insurance, you'll need to be able to demonstrate that you're taking some of the measures that you're talking about here on the bootcamp and that go on further then with the CCRO and the NCSE courses, and that the more you can demonstrate that you're managing your cybersecurity, the less your insurance will cost you. So that was just an interesting piece of information that came from the insurance horse's mouth there.
Thank you so much, Andrew. So the next question, Paul. Are all companies applying NIST framework for cybersecurity, or are there other standards they might be using?
Okay, it's a good question, because the reality is that over 90% of cybersecurity assessments and frameworks that are being implemented in organizations are based on the NIST cybersecurity framework for many reasons. It's very straightforward, it's very adaptable, it's got great context, everything else like that. Now, even the ones that don't seem like they are, so I mentioned earlier on there, things like the Bermuda Monetary Authority and the Code of Practice and so on, that is a reverse engineered version of the NIST cybersecurity framework. And that regulator essentially came out and said, yeah, actually, we based our requirements on the NIST cybersecurity framework, but we didn't call it that. We called it the code. And instead of having 5 function areas, we had 3, but they're actually all related back. So the reality is probably the most common, ubiquitous framework being adapted in the world, I would strongly argue, is the NIST cybersecurity framework. There are then management systems like ISO 27001, and there's lots of other frameworks for particular areas. For, say, for example, if you're working in the area of critical national infrastructure and so on, there's lots of different standards, frameworks, and so on. But what's fantastic about something like the NIST cybersecurity framework is it's something you can upskill on it pretty quickly. You can be effective with it very quickly, and it can relate to everything because of the way it's designed. So it's not like, hey, I've started this journey and I'm only going to do ISO, or I'm only going to do PCI compliance, or I'm only going to do a SAC or whatever it happens to be. They can actually adapt it and use it with everything as they go through. And I'm sure Audrey has views on it as well.
Hi, Paul. Thanks. I mean, I did the NIST course, the NCSE course as well. And I suppose for me, what I took from it was that what you learn on that course, and when you're learning about NIST, it's actually probably applicable to other frameworks. So there was a benefit for me in doing the NIST course that, and I mean, what you do as part of the course is you look at other frameworks and what is required to achieve certain goals. So it's a catch-all. It's not that you would even feel like you were doing this course and feel like you even had to use the NIST framework. I think it would teach you enough that you would be able to then utilize other frameworks if that was, different organizations, different industries have different requirements. So the ISO 27001 is kind of expected in some industries, but the NIST course kind of informs you enough to gives you that knowledge about frameworks in general. That would be my feeling anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Audrey, because one of the things that you answered brilliantly there, saying it's a catch-all, because what we talk about when we explain the NIST cybersecurity piece is the architecture of frameworks, how they all operate, and this, what we refer to as the nexus of controls, and how, for example, you could have FFIC, ISO 27001, the NIS directive, NIS, Network Information Systems Directive. You could have the NIST cybersecurity framework, and they're all a GDPR. You could have them all asking you the same thing in a slightly different way. So how you can actually approach creating your framework and be able to answer those pieces and bring it together specifically for you. Because look, at the end of the day, I'm often asked by an organization, which framework should I use? And you say, well, what's the name of your bank? Your name of your bank is Banana Bank. Okay, Banana Bank. The framework you need to use is called the Banana Bank framework. And yes, you may start aligning it with NIST, and you take the best of NIST that you're going to use, but you may use parts of ISO, you may parts of PCI compliance, and you start developing the framework for that organization. And that was part of the objective of the NIST cybersecurity framework course, was be able to bring the people through it, but them have the confidence to be able to say, okay, I'm not stuck and I'm not regimented to this prescriptive way of doing something. I have wiggle room, I have lateral movement to make it contextual for my business. And I think we did that pretty well in the core syllabus as well, because from Audrey's feedback there, that's exactly what I want people to get out of it, that they didn't feel, oh, I have to follow this next step, and what do I do now? What do I do now? Give you the knowledge, be able to get you to be able to apply that knowledge then for your own organizations. There's not one way to do everything. You have to apply it contextually to your organization.
Oh, Wendy Hopkins would you like to ask you a question.
Sure.
Wendy is on the camera with us.
Great. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Paul. Hi. So what I was thinking about is most companies have their internal compliance within the corporate entity. I'm just wondering that for entry-level opportunities, where would we see them advertised, and how would we, I suppose, jump into the system from an entry-level point of view, having not had any previous experience like your own? Also, what is the lead time in terms of room for growth and opportunity to maybe start towards that? I did hear a lot of the board level, senior management level, and I thank Audrey for her input. It's very kind, but I'm just wondering from the entry level, what scope do we have and where do we find those opportunities advertised?
Okay, thanks, Wendy. So let me explain that there's, when you say entry level, obviously, I assume you mean entry level in the cybersecurity world. Okay, so what we see is that the demand is in for people that may be at different stages of their career. So they're not entry level in their career. Okay, they may be 5 years into the career, 10 years into the career. And they're able to then get cyber skills, if you like, cyber qualifications like CISO, NCSE, whatever it happens to be. And they're able to then jump into a higher level within cybersecurity. You're not starting at the bottom. You're taking your business experience, you're taking your existing career, and you're augmenting it with cyber. Because where the demand is, when we talk about all of these kind of jobs that are in demand, everything else like that, and I know I was going quite quickly through the presentation, but what we're talking about is the demand isn't down in entry-level cybersecurity world. That's flooded with graduates, and that's flooded with techies who want to configure firewalls and security architecture and all that. Where the demand is, if you think of it like a pyramid, the bottom end of the pyramid is the busy end with lots of people fighting for that piece down there. And where the demand is you go up that pyramid into, say, middle management, senior management, business leaders, executive, all the operational pieces. That's where they want people with cyber skills. And that's where the gap in the market is. And it's ridiculous when I keep saying there's over 4 or 5 million open cybersecurity jobs, and the industry is made up of less than 10% women. It's just crazy. And I can tell you that, for whatever reasons, whatever profiling, people will convince me this, that, and the other. But the women I have had on the CISO courses far outperform men that are on the courses. And in this holistic world of cybersecurity, there needs to be an ability to be able to do multiple things and be able to, I'm not trying to stereotype anything, I'm just simply saying that the results of it are there. Women are faring better in this challenge of dealing with the multiple facets of the reality of cybersecurity. Whereas what we're seeing is that people who are on a straight line cybersecurity career, they're starting off learning IT, they're going from IT to being a penetration tester, they're going from that to doing a CCNA, they're going from that, blah, blah, blah. And there's pretty much a glass ceiling there as well, because they don't really understand business models, they don't understand compliance, they don't understand risk, they don't understand any of those things. So anybody who has business experience, what the CCRO and what the NCC, what those courses were designed to be, what wasn't, when we put them together, Wendy, it wasn't about a Me Too option where we're going, let's start somebody off and get them to be a cybersecurity expert. It's about, let's find business leaders and empower them to become business protection officers. What do they need to know? We want to demystify it. We want them to be able to understand the terminology, and we want them to be able to be empowered and augment their existing pieces. We don't want to replace stuff. We want it to exist them. And so when we get to your question about where do those jobs exist, probably in the organization you're working, because they're looking for people. But a lot of organizations are making this mistake of going, I need a CISSP, or I need a person who's been in the cybersecurity industry for 10 years. No, you need somebody that knows your business for 10 years. And has cybersecurity skills, which is the easiest part to bolt on, and to do that piece. So it's a bit of a challenge to hop in brand new into a cybersecurity career and work your way through. On the technical tracks, it's a lot easier. But the more lucrative positions are ones where people have the business skills, because it's easier to find. It's easier, the right word I'm using. It's finding someone with business skills and being able to apply cyber security skills to them is what businesses require. What they tend to be doing is they're going out and they're getting heavy end IT security qualifications people, and think that they understand regulations, business models, how banking works, how retail works, how aviation works, and the business. They don't. They understand CVE vulnerability indexes, and they understand how to patch, and they understand certain aspects of it. Hopefully that helps a little bit, but happy to answer a follow-on question if there is, or if Odie wants to hop in.
Paul, are you open for Mara to ask the last question? And the questions that we didn't answer and I got on the chat, you follow up later this week with the students.
Sure.
And if you girls have any question about the courses or anything else that we discussed here, and you have a questions, just send to me or to support@icttf.org, and I will follow up with you. So Mara, can you unmute and ask your question, please?
Yes, thank you so much, Paul. I just very briefly, I want to thank you for this course. I work more in the commercial area of cybersecurity, and this was very helpful to be able to speak more objectively with business managers and make them understand the value and also understand where they want to progress in their cybersecurity maturity. My question, I think it's a question that comes up a lot, is just about ransomware. What is your opinion? Should a company or a business pay ransomware or not?
Well, thank you,
so
Mara.
much.
Thank you, Mara, for your positive feedback. It's always gratefully received. And ransomware. So it's a difficult one, right? But I'll do my best to answer for you. The reality is, and for example, we have a ransomware workshop that we run up on ICTTF, and in that ransomware workshop, I used a quotation from the FBI where they said we had basically people don't have a choice; they have to pay ransoms. We have feedback from law enforcement officers who themselves became victims of ransomware and said we had no choice. We're a police department. We were victims of ransomware. We had to pay. So it's a complex answer because sometimes the reality is you might have little to no choice, but you do have choices. Okay, so there's a project called No More Ransomware. So often the keys are available and help and support is available there. No More Ransomware.org to be able to unlock your data and be able to deal with that situation. Other options, for example, when we looked at what happened with the oil pipeline in the United States, they paid the ransom, but then found out that the key took so long to decrypt the data that wasn't the option they should have went down because they had just fueled organized cybercrime. And now they're dealing with a situation where they still had to recover the data manually from backups and so on. Then you have a situation whereby, well, do you just take a principled stand and not pay and your business go under? So all of these things are going to be based on a risk-based decision about what are the consequences if you take option A, B, C, or whatever it happens to be. So there's no one stock answer. Look, morally and ethically, everybody would say, oh, you should never pay ransoms. The reality is 9 times out of 10, ransoms are paid. And unfortunately, and it's funny that we mentioned the insurance industry. And I love finishing off, say, a webinar by dropping a little bomb. But here's the reality of this, right? The insurance industry has caused this huge increase in ransomware because they're paying the ransoms. And the ransoms has gone from being a few $1,000s and $10,000, $50,000 to now millions of dollars. And the rumor mill, if you like, is that the organized criminal groups are only targeting or specifically targeting people that have cyber insurance. I'm no way saying don't have cyber insurance. I'm simply saying that organized criminals are highly organized, entrepreneurial, and if they find ways to target specific demographics of people that they feel are going to pay, then that's what they're going after. And that is why, to Audrey's point and the information she shared with us earlier on the call, is why the insurance industry are now going, wow, we've just got burnt. We're not in the business of being burnt and paying out all the time. So we're going to up our premiums and we're going to make sure that the people that we're insuring have some sort of safeguards, mitigations and controls in place, or we're simply not going to insure them. So it's going to be a growing issue, a growing problem as we head into 2022. It's so lucrative for the organized criminals and it's so easy. It's so easy. I mean, for people to do this, and there's also anecdotal evidence that they're turning people dark from within the organizations. In other words, it's ransomware as a service where they will say, "I'll do a 60-40 split with you. I'm the criminal. I just need you to click on this link, and I might, extort you to do that, or I might just simply offer you 40% of the ransom." To do that. So it's becoming so easy for them to do. I mean, and we mentioned the TV thing last night that I did, and within 30 seconds, I was shown hacking into somebody's computer, remotely controlling it totally. And when people see the reality of how simple this is from an organized crime perspective, they realize that the safeguard is an effective cyber security program. That's what you need to put in place. Reduce the possibility of becoming a victim and increase your ability to recover and reduce the impact of an incident when it does happen. And that phrase I used earlier on, ransomware, is a product of poor cyber hygiene. Okay, that's where you should be investing, is into your cyber hygiene, your cybersecurity program, and all those areas. So I think it's a very honest answer I've given in relation to should you pay, shouldn't you pay, but there isn't a one stock answer because it really depends on the circumstances. And I completely get it if people feel they've no option but to pay a ransom, because sometimes they don't.
Thank you so much, Paul. I'd like to thank you, Audrey, for joining us today. She's our new ambassador. She's bringing ICTTF to Ireland, to the world with her experience. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your presentation, Paul.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Audrey, I have to say as well. You were brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. And I just want to wish everybody who's completed this bootcamp today the very best wishes for their future.
Thank you. Bye-bye, girls. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care. All the best. Bye.
Bye.